Perfect.
Welcome, everyone. So this is an impromptu conversation with Jenni and Alysse. We're all about finding your tribe, and these two lovely individuals are part of the tribe. And the impetus of this conversation was they had questions. Jenni and Alysse had questions about coaching and content and growing audiences, and so what better way to get together? So maybe just if you could each spend like a minute just introducing yourselves, and then we'll just jump right in. Go ahead,
I'm happy
Jenni.
to go. Yeah, I'm happy to go. Hi, I'm Jenni, and I'm currently based in Zurich, but from San Francisco. I'm leaving my corporate job after about 15 years, not necessarily because that it was all that awful. There was a lot of great things about it, but just a desire for greater flexibility and time to spend with my family. I have two little kids, as well as a desire to do something that's more meaningful, that's more energizing, that's more fulfilling for me personally. And anyways, one of the ideas that I've had is to go into the area of personal finance. I've been pursuing financial independence for a while and kind of made into a hobby. And so interested in creating either content or coaching business around personal finance.
And what are your kids' names and ages?
Yeah, my kid's name is Charlie and Jesse. Charlie is 3 and Jesse is about 9 months.
Oh, awesome. Oh, you're in the thick of things.
I'm in the thick of it, yeah.
Awesome. Alysse, go for it.
Hi guys, my name's Alysse. Right out of college, I went into investment banking. So I did that for 4 years. And then about a year ago, almost exactly, hit a pretty big wall and quit the corporate world altogether. Moved over to Maui to surf, which was amazing. And about a year after, I decided that I kind of wanted to start this business of helping people with their personal finances. So that's been amazing, and it's been about 2 months. I've titled it Saffron Money after this cute little parrot named Saffron. And yeah, it's been a journey, and I have a handful of clients, and I feel like I learn something new every single time. And it's great to, try to help people out.
Awesome. And you'll appreciate this, Alysse. Since it's video chat, from the waist down, I'm still wearing my wetsuit.
Oh, I love it.
Because I ran back. I'm like, what time is it? I forgot my watch. What time is it? It's like 10 of 10. I'm like, booked it up the hill.
Did you catch some good waves today?
It was it was beautiful. It was glassy. It was tiny. I caught 2 little tiny waves, but I try to go in the water every day. So
nice. That's amazing.
It was good. So awesome. Well, you guys had sent me your questions in advance, and I had written them down, and you could probably hear my 1-year-old in the background. But I guess I was thinking about the questions, and there were kind of 3 categories. There was the question of like quitting and kind of dealing with an unstructured life. Then there was another section about just growing an audience, content, marketing, SEO, strategies around there. And then there was a third section around the coaching business and, acquiring clients, pricing, things like that. So I guess I'm going to turn it back to you. And if that's the right structure, open it up just as a starting point for whatever direction you guys want to go. Woo! We got the video, little parrot.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Awesome.
There we go.
So kick it off. Whoever wants to kick it off, and maybe if we use that loose structure, go for it.
Alysse, go for it.
Well, I think that I've grown more in the past year, kind of without having structure, than ever before, which has been an incredible journey because I feel like, ever since high school, really, I've been such on a structured path. I played soccer, and that was the goal to get into college. And then once I was in college, I played soccer in college, and then kind of towing the mark to get into investment banking. That I feel like once you let yourself kind of sit back and breathe, then kind of that's where the self-growth kind of comes in. And right now I'm really focusing on being present, which I think I've never really appreciated in my life before, which has been amazing. And I think that's kind of this self-reflection and self-discovery allowed me to find something that I am truly passionate about, that I do want to expand and continue to grow.
What's first off, congratulations to both of you for taking the jump, because like I said, 99% of the people think about doing it and 1% of them actually do it. So the odds are, you definitely are odds breakers. Alysse, what's been the most challenging part of the unstructured life, and like what would you tell Jenni, like what's on the horizon in this kind of contrarian way of being, living, and working?
I think kind of the first part of your question, the most difficult part, I think honestly, the influence of social media and kind of questioning your life's intention and your path based on what you're seeing other people doing. At least in my age demographic, and kind of a lot of my friends, a lot of people doing exactly what I was doing. So it's easy sometimes when you go on Instagram or different social media platforms to say, oh, wow, everyone else is doing this, and then easily question what you're doing. So that's why I think Maui has just been such a godsend to me, because there's kind of this like-mindedness associated with the people on Maui that I found, of almost a contrarian way of life. So I feel like I've fully immersed myself into that Maui lifestyle, that it feels so natural to just do you and be yourself and not worry about what other people think. Whatever that may be, kind of a no judgment zone, like for the entire island. So I think that's been just such a blessing, where I can really kind of explore who I am. And the other side of the coin is surfing. It's such a finicky sport in nature that you can't plan for it. You know, the ocean's going to give you what it gives, and you have zero control. If the ocean wants to provide that day, then you're going to have an awesome session. If it doesn't, you know, it doesn't. So just kind of rolling with the punches that way, I think, has just been an analogy for my life for the past year, that I've learned so much personally from surfing as well, that it all just feels like it's kind of fueling the fire.
Cool. And I would say on the Maui thing, when I quit, Jenni, like it's been 4 years, I needed to be out of the fray of, like, for me, it's less about social media. I'm turning 40. Like, I have friends who aren't on Facebook. So there's just a different, you know, I still am on Instagram, but I don't have that Instagram FOMO that someone probably younger than me has. But I needed to just get out of the like Wall Street scene. And I mean, to be honest, I fled. And I just couldn't deal with the questions. Like, why, wait, you don't have a plan? Well, you're 35, you have the dream, you know, like I just couldn't deal with answering those questions.
Yeah.
And what I found was, you know, people are like, now they're like, okay, you're crushing it. And I'm like, I'm not crushing it. Like, things are going well, but to set the record straight, I am still negative cash flow 4 straight years into it. And it's negative cash flow. It's more by choice, because I have the financial flexibility to be negative cash flow. And because of that, we have chosen not to significantly alter our lifestyle. And so we have the levers, and we've used the levers that we want to use. But there's no, like, it's so funny that people will say like, you're crushing it. And I'm like, do you know how hard it is to earn $200? Like, really, really hard to earn $200. But when you earn $200 off nothing other than the sweat off your own back, it's like earning $10,000. Like, it's the greatest feeling of all time. And then you realize that it's actually not just about the $200, but it's about the feeling that came with earning it. And so I just set that up because you're probably like entering, and you had asked the question in the seminar about that kind of like that switch. So just wanted to share my experience about it. You know, that there's a book that calls it, it's like an identity quake, where you just kind of like everyone, like, I mean, even, you know, the person who understands me most, my wife, you know, people would ask her, what is Kay doing now? And it's an awkward conversation because it brings up so many things, like everything from like privilege, like, wow, you can actually afford to do that, to like, what about X? You know, like, what about, you know, spending? And I said on the seminar, I mean, people would ask me, like, the first thing people would ask me when I left is, what does your wife think? And I'm like, that's such a fucked up question. It's like so gendered, and it's so like, it's so patronizing. But, you know, I could see why people would ask that question. And my wife is not a financial breadwinner. So anyway, I'll plant that there and just pause on that topic, just to see if there's any responses.
Yeah, actually, the privilege one is interesting because yesterday my wife and I were talking, and like someone was asking to kind of write up a story about us and wanted to kind of use the word early retirees, and like we both wanted to barf at that term, you know, like one, like we don't really consider ourselves that. Two, like it sounds so self-indulgent, you know. So
Yeah.
I think you kind of touched on that, Kay, in the seminar about that, you know, like the guilt or the whatever. So I don't know, I wonder how hard that has been for you.
The guilt, and especially now that we're in a conversation, I think an unhealthy conversation about privilege, where and honestly, I don't like to enter that conversation, but it's something I think about a lot. So here's this, like, really bugs me, is that if you think about RadReads and you think about what I'm doing, you know, you could distill it down to like making the 1% feel better about themselves. Like that's one way of like shaving, you know, of skinning the cat. And, you know, like I coach very wealthy people on how to be happier about their relationship with money. I give talks at financial seminars. The RadReads audience, like the protagonist that I can use in many of my stories, is someone who makes $1.2 million and who's unhappy. It's kind of fucked up. Like it kind of rubs me, you know, there's something about that feels raw, you know, in a time where like there's a lot of bad stuff happening in the world and a lot of inequality. It feels like, I mean, indulgent is like too soft of a word to be focusing on the 1%. But at the same time, you know, that's a group that I can communicate extremely well to, right? And so like maybe like, so I guess there's a few things. Like, do you always have to be supporting the people who are less fortunate than you? Like that's just a starting question, right? Does that have to be your full-time mission in life? Does that have to be something you do with a portion of your time, or do you even have to do it at all, right? That's an open-ended question. The second question is that yeah, the second point is that I've really come to believe that human beings suffer irrespective of your income. And if you can touch on someone's suffering and alleviate it, or provide ways for them to feel less alone, like I think that is a noble pursuit. But then it gets into like a more complicated question, and this is an existential question for me, which is like, how is your life measured, right? Is your life measured by, like, when it's all said and done, I'm not religious, so when it's all said and done, is your life measured by how much good you brought to the world? Like, I mean, that's a fine metric. That's a very good metric, but I don't think it's that simple, right? Like you know, I always, like it's, people want to reduce it to binaries or quantitative metrics, where you might say like, well, you know, this person saved 1,000 lives, but they never saw their kids. Like neither one of those is right or wrong. They just are. And to think that you have to, I struggle with like, where do I like insert myself into a false duality like that? And so like the question is like, do you rip out the duality? But that, that's especially if you're not religious, like those are like easier dualities to like look at. So what I try to do is, I always honor my privilege and keep like a true north that like, yes, I don't want to just help rich people feel better about themselves. But if I can't create an economic self-sustaining model, I can't help anyone better themselves because I'll be struggling. So I wish I had a clear-cut answer, but that's definitely a thought process that I have in my head very often.
Yeah, I agree. I think the notion of honoring your privilege is super important. And just, you can't change it necessarily. So I feel like, at least with me, I do feel, super fortunate to have been able to do what I've been doing for the past year. And there's a lot of privilege that comes with that. But at the same time, that's my situation for whatever reason. That now, so it's like, now that I've honored that, how do I, quantify my life and what's fulfilling to me? And I think, as a person that has found, and I feel like I've changed what I think quantifies my life. I think in the beginning it was like money, money, money. That's what, the sticker price of whatever you're making a year is your worth, so to speak. To go the complete opposite now, I think that individually people find what's fulfilling to them in how to quantify their lives. If that's something that you need to do for yourself anyway. So I think, it's a personal journey for everyone, and you can't, you just have to find what's right for you and then go with it, regardless kind of if you're in a privileged situation. So that's what I'm trying to do with mine.
And I'd add to the just having the self-awareness behind your app. The more you cultivate self-awareness, and you're like, you will know if you're, being, disingenuous about your privilege, or you're
Right.
really honoring it and trying to do something, right? Because I do think too that a lot of people that are so focused on like making an impact, like I would challenge them to understand why they're so concerned with making an impact. And I think you'll get a whole variety of reasons. And again, one's not right or wrong, but just understanding the why behind everything is important, especially for internal kind of peace of mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we switch gears to like content and audiences and platforms and all that fun stuff? What's the burning question in terms of, building RadReads, building audiences that either of you have that I could jump into?
I guess, sorry, go ahead, Alysse.
No, I was just going to say, what's your secret?
Yeah, I guess I would say, what's your secret? Plus, like, you talk a lot of, I think you're very real about that it's hard, and it is hard despite what everybody online would like to sell you for $500 or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, yeah, what's your secret, and like, what's a reasonable expectation, right? Like if Alysse and I are kind of thinking about this, is it like, okay, you're basically going to be working your ass off with no return for 2 years, and that's normal? Or like, what's normal, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so there's no normal in this business, like that for damn sure. What I would say, so I think I'm a little bit of an outlier because I have a strong digital presence, but most of my income is the result of me selling my time for money, not to be so crude, in the form of coaching and speaking. And I forget the exact numbers. And we could talk, I know there was a question about my part-time job, but like, if you carve that out, it's probably like 60 odd % is from coaching and speaking, where I command a fairly high rate. And so that's my income. So if you think about what my model has been, it's almost like content marketing in service of a service that I provide. And you could kind of lump that under consulting, coaching, and speaking. And so I think that's very different than what a lot of the things you'll read on the internet. I think there it's like ebooks and online courses. And I mean, sponsorships is, I haven't seen a single person that can make a real living off of sponsorship. You need like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of viewers. I think I know someone who has 100,000 page views on his blog. And for context, mine has about 18,000. And he makes, off that 100,000, he makes $1,000 a month.
Wow.
So like 100,000 is very, 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 you're in the top 5% of bloggers if you have 100,000 monthly readers. That's $1,000. So sponsorship. So the business models are just, they're all tough. Like sponsorship's tough. Patreon is tough. I think I have a pretty good Patreon, and it's about 14,000 a year. But again, that's not like, that's real money, but that's not moving the needle economically for how I want to live. Other, books, I haven't done like the ebooks route, but that's, it's a $10 book. Amazon's taking 20-30%. So $7, like you could do the math, like you got to sell a lot of things at $7 to make real money. And then the course, right? And I'm going to do a post on the course, but I think it's promising, but I'm not ready. I'm not here to tell you that like that's the thing that's going to really make the digital revenue. That the course made about $9,000 in net revenue, but it was about 100 hours of work. And I mean, it has a tail in the sense that I can reuse the content, but I don't think it has a large financial tail. And so, okay, so that's my starting. It's not a pretty picture of digital only revenue, but the good thing is that both of you are coming to this conversation not thinking that you're going to just make digital revenue. So what's the secret? I don't know, but I guess I have a few thoughts on the secret. Definitely, the number one secret is consistency. Everything that I've done has been consistent. It's been very much focused on the experience of the reader and the consumer. So it's really like what I think about, what am I doing? It's like my job is to add like real value to my readers. And so consistency with a focus, like a reader-centric focus, I think goes, and I guess like the third thing would be like my voice. I think it's pretty consistent. Whatever platform you catch me on, whether I'm being interviewed, I mean, you would know better than me, but I don't think that there's much of a difference, like how you see me. And I think 4 years of being in people's inboxes multiple times a week, like I feel like people really know me and trust me because I've presented a consistent image. And the only way you can do that consistently is by being yourself. It'd be hard to fake for 4 straight years. And so the consistency, and so I always tell people like the consistent metrics, 218 consecutive RadReads newsletters with maybe skipping 12 weeks in that period, spanning the birth of 2 kids. When I did the podcast, 52 consecutive episodes. I don't think you followed me when I was on Snapchat, but I think I did 200 consecutive daily weekday stories. Mm-hmm. The blog post within the newsletter, I think that's probably approaching 100 consecutive weeks of writing. And I think, so there's a few advantages to that. One, it's just the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours. Like you just get better by doing it every week, no excuses. I think that's one. The second is that if you are adding value to people's lives, then you become a part of their habit. Like the odd days where I take a weekend off, people will email me and say like, hey, I really missed seeing, you're like a friend on Saturday morning. But that comes with the patience of it. And then I think related to that, I think you set yourself up so I think the number of people that have come to me and they're like, I want to start a newsletter. And I'm like, okay, can you do it for 20 straight weeks? The number of people that can do it for 20 straight weeks is probably less than 5%. and then it really just becomes a question of like, how bad do you want it? Right. And I think the how bad do you want it needs to jive with, like, you can't do it just out of, want. You have to do it out of joy. Like, I think about my newsletter every day, all day. I think about the questions you guys ask me. And so I think that they're like, with the consistency, you built in like a secret weapon that is just like, I challenge anyone to do a newsletter on the topics that I cover, because I just don't think you can think about it more often than I think about it. And so that's just a built-in advantage, and it can be a disadvantage too when you're an entrepreneur and you have a partner and you have kids and all that. Like, sometimes they're like, please stop thinking about the newsletter. You have 2 wonderful kids and a wife in front of you right now. You don't need to think about how you're going to format that bullet. And so I think it cuts both ways. And then the last thing I would say, I would add two points. One, I've received this advice a lot. I've pretty much taken it, is pick one medium and get really, really good at it. I think people try to do YouTube and Instagram and podcasts and all that. And, it's probably going to be a while until you can hire someone else. I just hired an intern for 3 hours a week. You're going to be doing everything by yourself. And there's just so much, Alysse, you probably see this, just, you want to do 10 Instagram posts. Like, someone's like, oh, that should take like 3 minutes to post, like 30 minutes. It probably took like 8 hours. So you just don't see that until you do it. And as you add mediums, like just sending the confirmation emails and the follow-up emails for the course, that took me like 6 hours for like a 15-word email. So there's just a hidden tax of doing all this stuff. So just like get good at one medium is the advice that I've heard often. I pretty much stick to it. So that would be one advice. And then the last thing I would say is, when you put yourself out there consistently, then it's almost like fishing. You have so many fish hooks out everywhere. And then just like random things will start biting. And I can't tell you when they will be, or who they will be, or how they will come across, but it's just inevitable. Like, if you're adding value, you're doing it consistently, and you're being genuine about it, like, things are going to happen. And then I think that's when you turn on like your turbojet of entrepreneurship, where like something happens and you get a little bite, and then you just like, you use the drive that you have used to make you successful in your respective fields, and you just like run as fucking hard as you can to make that shit happen, And so like, you don't really know when it's going to happen. But that's kind of like, once you see it, you just like, you go big. Like, you just, someone's like, hey, would you coach me? And I'm like, I had sent them like a 3-page proposal within 24 hours. Like, you just go. So I'll pause there.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so I guess, one, like when you said medium, like for you, that's your blog and the newsletter, is that right?
I would say for me, my medium is the written word. Like, I'm a good writer. I like writing. And so I would I post my blog, like my blog almost originated out of my newsletter. So I kind of lump them into one. But I know people that are like purely Instagram, I think that that's a dangerous strategy, and I can share why, but it's definitely possible. I mean, I was talking to an entrepreneur who told me, she said, my next company, I don't even know if I'm going to have a webpage, because I could do it all off of Instagram. And I don't doubt that. I think I've personally found that very difficult, but it's definitely possible. I think video, if you're comfortable and good at video has a high production cost. But if you can, I know that if I spent like a month learning video, I could crank out videos as quickly as I could crank out blog posts. I think that would be a powerful, like, if you get YouTube, like, I think that's a powerful thing, because the thing, so that leads to, so I would say mediums. So on mediums, I think that it's important to have at least a place to, I think you need a lightweight newsletter, because if you're subject to the feed in Instagram or Facebook, we saw how that ends. You don't own the relationship with your customer. And so you truly own the relationship with your customer or your prospect with a newsletter. That doesn't mean you have to do a weekly newsletter, but you need some way to get people's emails. Because when you're going to ask them to buy something for you, when you're going to ask them to share something for you, it's going to be hard to do that on Instagram. So Twitter, I don't know. We could talk about Twitter, but I don't think either of you are like big Twitter people. I'm not a huge Twitter person, but it's definitely very powerful too. So then I want to talk about like other paths of discovery, right? So there's like, I think discovery is an important question. Like, how do you get discovered? But before I talk about discovery, I want to let's talk about mediums. Like, do you have any questions, follow-up questions on that, Jenny, or Alysse, about like mediums themselves?
I think for me, I think you're totally right about consistency. So for you, you are a writer. So I feel like the biggest hurdle that I would potentially have is that consistency in terms of feeling an obligation to create content in the written form. I feel like I do have a lot to say, but it's definitely not, it's like not consistent. Like when it comes to me, it comes to me and it's really powerful, but it might not come to me every week. So I guess, I would love to have a newsletter and I've been kind of just writing like blog posts down to kind of accrue a base so I can go forward on a go forward basis, have consistency. But kind of are you always inspired? Do you ever, kind of what's your secret in terms of?
Well, that's a great question. I think that's an excellent question. I think one thing is just, I'm a rabid note taker. So anytime any of you have ever asked me a question, I have a gigantic file of questions. And so if I ever have writer's block, I just go read the questions and I just answer one, and I'll just, and so so I would say that just like note taking, I collect cool Instagrams, quotes, stories, links, all that. So like having like an organizational system where you can like quickly go to it. So here, I'll share this screen with you guys, gals. So I have, I'm going to share it in a second. Let me just open it. Okay. Screen share. Can you see a pink screen? Okay. Mm-hmm. So this is Airtable. It's think of it as like a Google Sheet on steroids with just like more customizability, but you could do the same thing in Google Sheets. This is like my ideas notebook for blog posts. And so it's got some filters on, but let's just see what's good. And so every time, so if you look at column A where it says name, every time I have an idea for a blog post, I just write it down. And so if you scroll down, there's 68 blog post ideas. And then in the notes, someone asked me, should I leave New York City? And then I pasted in the email. The burning question for me is whether it's better to be a medium small fish in a big pond or move to a small pond like Austin where I can create more wealth and be a bigger fish. I don't know if I'll ever write about that topic, but I can. I'm qualified to write about it. I have opinions about it. I'm not like particularly interested in writing about it at this moment. But so if you see here, if I ever, type 2 errors and market timing, it's just like using a statistical framework to talk about like the decision to sit out the market. I add little things like I rank them so I could always like sort by, I could always sort by, the highest ranking to the lowest ranking, right? So, the number, I actually wrote that one. So economy plus. So I have a system. And I could show you something like, I could show you another system that I use to like collect good Instagram posts. I could show you another system where I collect stories about people's relationship with money. And so like, I always am just collecting these things, not really knowing what they'll turn into. But that's how I prevent writer's block. The other thing though is consistency doesn't equal writing long form on a weekly basis. Like consistency could be I get a newsletter where people just send me like their 10 favorite tweets of the week. Like that's cool. Like that's actually like a real value add to me, because tweets are like, a good tweet is like a good joke. Like it takes skill to write, something good in 140 or 280 characters. There's another newsletter that just collects interesting Reddit threads. There's, you could just collect links and write a sentence about the links. There's another one that like has an interesting chart every week. So you don't have to podcasts, or a quote from a podcast or a lesson, like you could do a newsletter that just extracts an interesting snippet of a podcast and sends it every week, right? So I would encourage you to think outside of like having to write a ton, and think about any fragment that you could collect from the web, from your life, from photography, music, and I don't think that it has to be like, you both want to do money coaching, money, money related things, but like, it doesn't have to be about money, right? I think if you look at RadReads and how it's evolved over time, like you can kind of see the things that I've cared about over the 4-year period. Like in 2015, it was like heavy on like AI and fintech, and because that's what I was interested in. And like, and around Me Too, there's a lot of stuff around like gender and like what role do men play in gender equality and what's our responsibility. And I still care about those things, but not like, it's not like the most top of mind thing. So to some extent, like, I think the thing to remember is that people want to be taken on your learning journey, right? Both of you are on journeys that people want to lens into. And so you don't have to deliver them like 5 articles on money, but you have to give them like a consistent lens into your journey through something. And that would make it easier.
Yeah, I love that. I love those ideas.
Yeah, super helpful. Follow up, I guess, to go along those lines, like everything you said makes sense. I think the consistency, the unique voice, all that makes sense. I think the thing that my question is like, how long, or how do you get the signals to know whether you're on the right track or not? Because I can definitely believe like it's very possible to write or video or Instagram your little heart out for 2 years and then realize like you actually, what you're writing actually isn't appealing to people, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, so for me, the thing that like still motivates me to this day is just the engagement. And you don't think of engagement as like, I'm not talking like engagement, like Facebook engagement, like how many people are commenting on a photo. I think of engagement as like people are writing me messages to tell me something that I said is moving them. I mean, that was to me, and that probably, I started in earnest, like really committing to writing a lot, like January of 16. And that started in that year where people, like someone's like, I thought about committing suicide because some of the things that you verbalized were some of the things that drove me to that point. And, I lost my brother, and I've realized in reading what you write that so much of what motivates me is to try, like, I'm trying to use ambition to like bring him back, and that's just not the right, and so are those like business leads? No. Do they put money in my pocket? No. Do they bring me tremendous joy? Yes. do they validate that I'm on the right track, or that I have some kind of, product market fit in like more of like in the idea space, right? Like, so those were all signs. That's one thing. But then there's like the brass tacks, like I got to make money off this thing, right? And so I think that there's a few ways to think about that, right? You can be we can talk in like very precise money terms, but you might say, and this is kind of what I said, it's like, I'm giving myself 2 years to make money doing this, and I'm willing to lose money in 2 years. That might be 6 months for you. That might be 3 months for you, and there's different levers, right? Like you could change your lifestyle. Your partner could work, whatever. So I think that there is the brass tacks of like, is this commercially viable? And like dropping little hints along the way. I got very lucky in that, is that almost every commercial opportunity that I had came inbound. So it wasn't like me sitting around. I was always sitting around thinking, how am I going to monetize this? But by just putting myself out there, the first thing was, this is how the coaching started, was a hedge fund manager who was reading what I wrote, was like, you seem to know a lot about what it means to live a happy life. My employees are not happy. Can we pay you to teach us? And I'm like, this is really not how it works, but sure. And like, that was the first step. And it was, I guess I like became a coach, like that, with no training or anything. Another thing that happened through writing, and I know this was one of Jenny's questions, was I got approached to be an entrepreneur in residence at Quartz, a media company. And so again, one of the editors he's reading what I wrote. She's like, you're kind of a journalist. I'm like, what? I'm not a journalist. I just got like this dinky newsletter. What are you talking about? She's like, no, you're kind of a journalist. And not only are you kind of a journalist, but you're kind of the type of journalist that could succeed in like this new paradigm of journalism. Like, you just don't write long form, you're creative in your medium use. And so then I joined that. It was unpaid, and it led to something paid. So I think it's going to be very hard to have metrics on subscriber growth. Like, I just don't know how you can compare. I think you can definitely look at trend lines. Like, but again, I said this on the seminar. So RadReads is at 16,000 subscribers. 13,000 of those, 12 or 13,000 of those came in like 6 business days. And they came after the CNN article and the Bloomberg article. And so if you take those two things out, I'm a 3,000 person newsletter. I don't think that's bad, but it's definitely not 16,000. And, my seminar, if I'm selling a seminar to 16,000 or 3,000, you divide by 5, I go from making 9,000 to making 2,000, 1,600. So it's hard to know like what the benchmark is. And then, you look at my peers like Shane Parrish, he's like 250,000 subscribers, right? Like he's like the Uber of what I do. Like you can't even compare us. But he also has a staff of 5, and so I think it's really hard to compare using specific benchmarks, but I know for a fact that like my 16,000 is like highly engaged, like deep pocketed, like for the internet. Just look at the two of you, right? Like that like you are the kind of dream customer of the internet. And so like, I'm confident that I have that customer. And I'm also confident that like, for what I'm doing, like speaking gigs and coaching, I don't need that many conversions, right? I need like 10. So it's almost like I could probably get 10 without even having a newsletter, right? The newsletter definitely helps me get the 10, and I'm at 10, so I'm actually at capacity. And so I think that like, you have to also think about like, it's not just the metric, but it's the metric that converts into the thing that you want to convert and at the price point that you want to convert. And again, you could have, if you just need 10 people to convert at a high price point, you know, you might only need 500 people on your newsletter.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the way I've been thinking about Instagram, because, you know, a website and Instagram for me have kind of been the low-hanging fruit that I wanted to tackle initially. I think, you know, it definitely takes longer than you think it does, each post for sure, but it's more to convert into a potential client at this point, which I have converted, which has been, you know, a pleasant surprise because I didn't really know what it was going to yield. But there's kind of that side of the content world, and then like creating content for the subscriber base that's, you know, hopefully will convert in a bigger way. So I guess right now for me, it's like, how do I make the next push to kind of expand beyond kind of my friends and family and kind of my closer community? Because, you know, at the end of the day, I do want to make an impact in as many people's lives as I possibly can. But how do I even reach, you know, a potential, you know, that level of people, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that Jenny had a similar question. It's like, how do you reach outside of your tribe, right? And so for me, the biggest one is press, like by far. And I think that, I don't think I'm unique in that. Press is not easy. I got really lucky. I mean, you couldn't even pay a PR firm to get the press that I got in those two pieces. I mean, CNN called me Oprah for Millennials on New Year's Eve and ran the story for 3 days on the homepage. Like that would cost millions, like hundreds of thousands of dollars at a PR firm to get that. But again, I had no way of knowing. And I actually haven't recreated a press hit in 2.5 years since that happened. So it's very episodic.
Yeah.
I would say so, but I think that so I do think that just by posting regularly, you're going to grow your reach because people will pass it along like that. And I think now, like, you know, I'm probably getting net 35 new subscribers a week. And I get net 35. I probably lose 40 each week. So gross 75 ads, net 35. And that's just like people forwarding it to other people. So I think so you will get that organic growth from that, from just consistency. You know, there are like growth hacky tricks, you know, where you can kind of try to get people to forward, you know, on Instagram, either ways to game the algorithms. Like, I'm not the right person to talk to about like anything that's particularly growth hacky, but know that people do it. I think that probably the best way that I've found is to, it's almost like mixtape culture in hip hop, right? You know, Snoop Dogg was featured on Dr. Dre's Deep cover in like 1994 maybe, or 1992. And look at him now, right? And so I think there's a lot of like mixtape culture that's in the internet. You see it in YouTube where people collaborate, like, and the very obvious one is like guest posting, right? Guest posting is a very effective way to grow your audience because, you know, you get a link, you get to throw your subscribe thing in, that person will share it. So that would be one way. Anything that involves collaboration, like swapping Instagram handles, a podcast, even like something like this, right? Like, you know, I'm gonna I'll create a little video of it. Like, there's a possibility that you might share it to your networks, and right there, I'm getting access to your networks by just doing something that I would naturally do. So I think you develop an intuition, like definitely like finding your tribe, like people will share each other's newsletters in there. But so I would say like guest posting, different types of collaborations are probably good ones. Getting on people's podcasts. I mean, I think that's hard, but again, like, you know, there's probably a shitload of podcasts that have, you know, 50 listeners. You know, you get on a podcast with 50 listeners, you might get 3 new followers. Like, it's, you know, but you get 3 new followers for, 50 straight weeks, you have 150 new followers and 300 by the end of 2 years. Like, so again, I think that there is like, it definitely requires collaboration. So that would be another thing to think about. And again, the more times you put yourself out there, like you increase your probability of someone being like, yo, you're like, that's my jam, and then like them doubling down on you. And like, there are a few people that like will share every single thing that I write always, I've never asked them to, like, they just found something. And so you increase your chance of that. The other thing, because I know you mentioned it, Jenny, is SEO and search. I was late to the SEO game, and I only have 4 pieces that drive real SEO. So I have 18,000 views a month. Actually, here, I'll pull up my Google Analytics for you. I'm going to share my screen in a second. And by the way, I can definitely go for another half hour. We haven't even talked about coaching, but I just want to be mindful of your guys' time. Okay, so share. Okay, can you see my Google Analytics?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, see, I mean, I have 1 active user right now, which is pretty lame for a Friday morning. So if you go down, let's see, I'm not even that good at Google Analytics, but let's do like the last 30 days. Okay. So these top 4 posts, so the top 3 posts here, how to overcome the scarcity mindset, the station, this was just random. I like copy and pasted a poem that I found that was like in Creative Commons, and people search for this poem. Total random. And then this was a very specific piece. I wrote a book summary on atomic habits. That was very much like an SEO driven piece. And relationship resentment, it was like semi SEO driven. This is just my blog. None of these others are SEO pieces. So this is a 12-month report. So SEO does drive, like my top 3 to 4 pages of traffic. Oh, obviously my top page is my homepage. So, so I think it helps. I don't know, like this poem, like if you land on this poem, I'm not convinced that you're like, oh, RadReads is what I really need in my life. So my hunch is that it's not really converting much. This scarcity mindset post, I think probably does okay. Like from converting people, because I need them to come and then subscribe to my newsletter. And I could probably track down the analytics, but I'm not good enough to like know exactly how to, I know how to do it. I'm just too lazy to do it. Atomic Habits, I know for a fact probably brings like 3 to 5 new subscribers a month, a week. So it matters, but again, 3 to 5 subscribers a week on 9,000 page views, it's not, I guess you could take away 2 things. It's possible. I'm not good at SEO. It's possible, but like, that's a lot of work to get 150 new subscribers, to get like an SEO hit that you researched how to do and all that. So it's doable. And I think that, I wish I had known about SEO earlier, because there's like small things you can do to just kind of catch the wind in your sails. And I wish I had done those things earlier. And I'd be happy to share what those things are. But I think SEO, I would almost say like SEO is like another channel. Like, are you going to get good at SEO? Then like figure the fuck out of SEO. And so that would like tie it very closely to blogging, obviously. There's also a huge SEO and YouTube angle right now. I know nothing about it, but if I were to think of a channel, I would probably I think YouTube plus SEO would be like my next channel. if I was going to add one. And I would pick that over podcasting, even though I like podcasting better, because I think YouTube plus SEO has like powerful discovery that podcasting just is like so bad at discovery. And so I would think about discovery as like, you know, I would definitely think of SEO in your kind of discovery toolkit with the caveat that it's very difficult. It's not difficult, it's very time consuming. Any of these things are just extremely time consuming, which is why you can only really pick one and when it's just you, in my opinion.
And are there any kind of like, did you follow, I mean, there's so many teachers, resources, experts online. Did you follow or take courses or recommend anybody, you know, when it comes to this whole discovery and online marketing world?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so I found my tribe over time.
Yeah.
And, you know, the way that I'm sharing this with you too, people have done it to me in the past. So I feel super fortunate. I will say that most of that tribe you find via Twitter. I mean, that's like what Twitter is really good for, is like if you really cared about SEO, it would be very hard to find who are the other people who care about SEO on Instagram. They're there, but you couldn't find them. So Twitter has been very good for me in finding my tribe. But you know, it's kind of like what you're doing, you know, like I find someone and you quickly, the internet has, for the bad reputation that the internet has, it's very, I find it to be extremely collaborative. And so I think it's no different than like how you would network in investment banking or in tech. It's just done digitally. I read a lot. I only paid for one course, which is Tiago Forte's course called Building a Second Brain. And that's really more on the organizational principles that I had shared with you earlier. I paid a coach to help me launch the workshop. That was the first time I really paid someone. I have a life coach, but that's separate. Now I'm definitely becoming way more, having created a course or workshop, I have a much greater appreciation that, like, you know, before I created a course, I was like, all the material is online, like if you just look. But I think a good course, like you need a curator and you need a storyteller and you need someone that takes you through it. So I'm definitely willing. The next thing that I want to look into is Facebook ads, because I think that maybe I could use Facebook ads to resell my workshop. So I would either consider getting a coach or taking an online course on, like, specifically on Facebook ads. The thing is, though, like, it's kind of, I think you need to just fuck around a lot to know the right questions to ask. Like, I think it took me 3 years to figure out what are the questions I should even be asking. And no course can teach you that. I think you can learn that through conversation. I think you can learn that through experimentation. I think you can learn it through reading. Like, the reading helps. But like, I think about design, right? Like, I like design. I think a lot about the photos that I use. I think a lot about the colors. Like, I just got new headshots. Like, I think about that stuff. But it took me a while. Like, I needed to know what good design was before I could even take a class on good design. And so, and to me, that's like the most fun part of all, is that, like, you can just go down these rabbit holes of things that you just find interesting. And, like, I think it's so cool that like you learn to see the world differently. And this is probably what excites me the most for the phase that you both are in. So think about SEO, like, blah, 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 SEO. You type some words into Google, like, it spits out 10 results. Like, did you ever actually think about, like, how that was happening, or why you chose to pick the third result over the first one, or like how much it costs to put the ad on top of it? Like, once you just learn a little bit about SEO, it will change the way you think about search. And that's just like, if you're just a curious person, that's fucking awesome. And you'll never look at search the same way. And you'll be better at SEO if that's something you care about. If not, you just be a more interesting person. And so I think that like, that's the cool part of like, in this early phase that you're both in, just like getting your hands messy and trying shit out, throwing stuff against the wall, not being afraid to fail, not being embarrassed about putting something out crude. Yeah, that was a little bit of a tangent, but if pause now.
No, I agree. I think when I was initially starting to embark on this journey, I was so inspired to help people that I just kind of hit the ground running immediately. But you don't really know what you don't know until you're kind of in it. So I, whether about like even like my clients themselves or how to manage my clients or just the content side and the SEO side, which is like a whole different beast, and Instagram even, that I feel like a big kind of hurdle for me was, do I kind of map this out as much as I can before launch, or do I just launch and kind of live it and see where it goes? And I feel like I kind of did a hybrid of both. Like I did kind of a soft launch, as I say, but I still kind of want to do a full, like, everyone I know kind of outreach of like, oh, this is what I've created, this is what I'm doing, but kind of waiting for the perfect time. So should I just go for it, or should I kind of like make sure all my ducks are in order?
I feel very strongly of like the messiness. Go with messy. I think about Kanye West's album, The Life of Pablo, where he like uploaded it to Spotify and he just kept changing it, and it drove everyone crazy in the record industry. But I actually don't think that there's really like finished goods anymore, right? Like everything is just like a Google Doc, where it's like you can't like hit save and crystallize it at a point in time. And I know like a lot of 40 and 50-year-olds really struggle with this. Like they want to know version control. Like, what was the version that I read? It's like, there's no version control. These are just living organisms. Your Instagram, my coaching practice, this video, it's just a living organism. And so I think that that's a hard thing to accept, because you didn't get to where you were professionally by, doing 80% of the work and not being perfectionist and meticulous about details and things like that. And I think it's hard to verbalize, but I think that there is this magical balance where, like, my mom still points out my typos in my blog posts and my grammar mistakes. Like, my mom probably will watch this video if I share it. Like, I love you, Mom, but like, I don't fucking care. Like, my
it's nice that she watches it though.
She definitely does. And in the early days, she was like 20% of the viewership. But the thing is, like, I probably have written the same blog post like 7 times. Like that post on the number, I've written it. That was one of the first posts I wrote when I started my blog on Medium. And I just keep, like, it's just a living draft. And people will be like, well, aren't you scared of pissing off your viewers? Like, don't you want, it's like, no, they actually want to see the evolution of it versus the finished product. And so I would encourage you to not even think about a finished product. That doesn't mean to not hold yourself to a high standard. The two things are consistent. You can have a living document that is held to a high standard. They're not mutually exclusive. But I do think that, and especially the reason why that works is because everything happens so fast, right? Like when someone, if someone, I just got a few pieces of feedback from my course, and people are like, the scarcity mindset part is the best part. And like, I think the next course is on the scarcity mindset. And I'm already starting to like fire off, like, what do I need to do? What do I need to post? What do I need to write? Like, what do I need to collect? And it just, everything happens so quickly that, like, if you're sitting there being like, this, like, the financial independence course wasn't perfect, then you're like missing it, you know? And I think too, with the speed of iteration comes the speed of feedback loops. Like you get feedback really quickly. And again, that's where I like put on your like banking hat and your tech hat. And like, as soon as you get the feedback, run quickly, but be willing to like throttle back. Like, don't be so emotionally invested that like in that one thing.
Yeah, totally. That totally resonates with you. I really like what you said about not being focused on a final product, but not lowering your standard either. So yeah, that likes it. I like
and
that.
I think like a Gen X or an older millennial would assume that you know, having living documents means that you're sloppy. Like it's actually not. You're not sloppy. It's actually by design.
Yeah. Yeah. If I might ask, because I know we're kind of running low on out of time. First of all, thank you so much for taking this time and letting us pick your brain. Around the part-time work, because that's one of the things, and like you, I'm also breadwinner for my family, so I do have, you know, like we can definitely go cash flow negative for a while, but at some point I got to make some money.
Yeah.
How do you think about your part-time work with the other parts of your stuff you do?
It kind of happened accidentally. And so, Alysse, my part-time work is I'm a contributing editor for QZ.com, which means that I do a mix of writing, a mix of helping them come up with ideas, and I help them with special projects. Like I did a 6-episode podcast for them. I would say, so financially it helps, but that really isn't the motivation. There were two things that were missing, and Quartz kind of magically filled that in. One is, and this is a warning to you both, you might have already felt it, this work is super lonely. You sit in coffee shops by yourself and crank out Instagram posts, and like you occasionally have a Zoom call with a client. I'm a really social person. And it kind of, I don't think people talk about this enough. It can suck. And you really need to go above and beyond to find your tribe. Alysse, I'm imagining you found part of your tribe in the water. I have for sure. But like, you got to find your tribe. You got to find your intellectual tribe. You got to find your creator business tribe. You got to find, you know, your service, your faith, whatever. And so I just missed like being in an office with people that were young and energetic, and like the cliches of like sitting around the water cooler and talking about the NCAA tournament. Like I just missed that stuff. And so that was one of them. The second thing is that I think you used the phrase, Jenny, like I'm treating this as an MBA. There's a lot to learn. And I think I just dumped on you, you know, 10 to 20 categories of ways you can learn. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. But I missed like having people mentor me and teach me. And I think that part of the reason I became a better writer was that I had access to the editors at Quartz. You know, I became like a lowly journalist that had to, you know, pitch people for ideas. And like, it's one thing, you're like, well, you're a blogger, you knew how to write. It's like, blogging and journalism are two different things. One's not better than the other, but they're fucking different. And having someone edit your writing will always make you a better writer. Having someone criticize your work. And I think it's really hard in the work that we do to, like, who's going to be critical of our work? You can pay a coach, you can ask a friend for a favor, but they're not really going to tell you the truth. They're not invested enough, or they care about you in a different way. So that's something that I would encourage you to get ahead of early. I think a business coach is a good idea. But so I would say that was like the big part of getting a part-time job. Look, it very much helped financially, but I would put that that would probably be like the fourth reason. The third reason that I think it was really beneficial was that it helped. It's the like, what does your business card say test? It's an identity question. And, you know, when people are like, well, we'd like K to speak, is K from RadReads carry the same gravitas as K from Quartz? Maybe now they're similar. I don't know. It really depends on the event. But 2 years ago, K from Quartz carried way more gravitas than K from RadReads. And I think that depend on what you want to do. I think that matters.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I got one more topic. Pricing.
Yes.
Tell us that. I wanted to know. Yeah, actually, Alysse, I was going to ask you, like, how do you price?
I have no fucking idea how to price. So pricing is so hard. It is so freaking hard. Honestly, for my coaching practice, I used a coach. My friends use coaches. I'm friends with coaches. I had a rough idea of what the range was for coaching, and I probably started at like a 20 to 30% discount at that. And then I just like started raising my prices. Like every new client, I would just raise it by like 5%, 10%. And then people kept saying yes, so I kept raising it. Then I got like a stretch of no's, and then I brought it back down. So I wish I had like a more specific formula. I think a few things that I have learned about pricing. Alysse, you wrote this in your note. You got to get people away from like, I'm paying you per hour. It's like, you're not paying me per hour. I have spent 4 years researching these topics. Like, let's factor that into the hourly calculation. That would be one thing. The other thing, you know, what I tell people is like, you know, you guys are like my coachees are like my children. You know, I am thinking about you 24/7 while we're in an engagement, even beyond an engagement. Like, how do you value that? I think that there's a lot around like the psychology of pricing. I haven't gone down that pathway yet, but it's something that you might consider doing. So for example, what you could do is like, you could say my price is this, but in addition to like my coaching price is this, but in addition to my coaching, you get these 15 things. And like, even if they don't want any of the 15 things, just the psychology of being offered 15 things, like breaks them from this like hourly rate. Like, I'm not good at this stuff. I'm not particularly interested in like getting good at it. But you should know that there's very, very, very specific science to all this. And I would presume that there is some low-hanging fruit that you could learn really quickly about pricing that could help you. They could alleviate a lot of this. But I think also too that you can't let pricing impact your identity, right? Like if you're willing to do something for 50% off the market rate, like, it doesn't mean that you're 50% worse than the market rate. It doesn't mean that you're 50% worse than the person who does that. It's just where you are. And like, I did this for speaking. Like I did a ton of speaking gigs for free. My view of it is like, just the fact that someone willing to pay you is the most important data point right now. And then you can think about what my market value is. And to some extent, I use that philosophy with the workshop, which was like, I don't know how many people are actually willing to open their wallets to enter a credit card number on a form. Just like, I just want to know that you're willing to do that. Like, that tells me a lot. And I got lucky. Like, I did not expect to make $9,000. I thought I was going to make like $4,000. So like, I overshot my expectations, but I really was like, the whole time I was thinking like, how many people are actually willing to like open their wallets for this? was really the data point that I was after. So I think about like, I would definitely, I bet it, I'll share this book on the psychology of coaching. There's like a really good book on coaching that people love. I haven't read it, so I'll give you that disclaimer. But I'll share it with you guys. And yeah, I do a little research on the psychology of pricing, because that's probably good to know out of the gates.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like my main client base now are all friends or friends of friends. So yeah, it's kind of weird to ask your friends for money, especially when you're giving them financial advice. But the thing that I've been doing, which I think has been helpful for the next client, is, every time I ask, like, what would you pay for this? Like, I'm not going to change my rate based on, the service I provided, but just to like accrue any data points that you can.
Totally.
I think, and I've been super surprised on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Just in my experience personally. So I don't know, I'm just going to try to continue to do that as well.
Yeah. I actually, every time I get rejected, I email the person and I say, just so, if you could just help me with my research, what part of your decision to pass was based on price? I'll explicitly ask them. And that takes some shelving of the ego to do that. And actually, surprisingly, I've surprised myself, and 75% of them have said it's not because of price. And so I would not. And again, pricing also leads to like imposter syndrome. It leads like asking people for money is really hard. I think the faster you can get comfortable asking people for money, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, I think transparency is key.
Yeah,
for sure. But it is awkward. Absolutely.
It's super awkward. And I just met you both, but you strike me both as generous people pleasers. And so asking people to pay is even harder for that archetype, but you have to do it. Your time now is your most valuable resource, like as a business person. Like you have to ask.
Yeah. And
sometimes what I'll do with people is I'll say like, hey, because a lot of people are going to want to like pick your brain on this and pick your brain on that. And what I'll say is like, people always ask me to speak at little talks and breakfast and things like that. And so I'll say like, and I'm a very transparent and vulnerable person. I'll say like, I have to ask, would you consider compensating me for this? And I don't tell them whether I'm going to say yes or no, but I just ask. And in fact, I asked that once, and it was an unpaid thing, and they ended up paying me $2,000.
Wow. So
money is such a weird thing, as you both know. So yeah, again, a lot of it is like the managing of the identity and the ego through it all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Kay. That was really extremely helpful.
Oh, yeah,
my pleasure. I like we're forming our little tribe, and we'll keep adding. I mean, like I said, I think that I can think of at least 15 people that would want to be privy to this conversation. So thank you for allowing all of us to kind of share into your questions and your experiences, because it is just gonna increase. It's just gonna boost the tribe.
Yeah, for sure. I love it.
Awesome. Well, Alysse, I think I sent you the invitation to the Slack channel, but I'll share the follow-ups there just because it's easier for me to keep everything in one place. But definitely find it there. I'll share the coaching stuff, and I think I have some pricing things too that I can share.
Cool. Absolutely. Thank you so much. This was amazing.
Awesome. Thank you both. And just keep the questions coming. Like I said, so much of the joy of like I do this work so that I can have these conversations. which is like, again, it's kind of like I challenge anyone to be as invested in a RadReads competitor as me, because it's like, it's all I think about. And so, and again, and if someone else has that level of passion, awesome. That means there's more of us in the world. Like, that's like what I want. So I thank you both for being part of this journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Have a great weekend. You'll see this video being shared as story number 3 tomorrow in the newsletter.
Awesome. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you so much.
Have a great weekend.